So we had a new initiative that was just launched in the Chabad of the East Side. They have kind of an after Sunday morning kollel type of thing where there's people stay after davening and learn something and have a hot breakfast and the initial uh, the first time was this past Sunday. And among other things, this was something that we spoke about, and people. I mean, Baruch Hashem, it was exciting, and it generated a lot of conversation, and brought back good memories for me too. So I'll tell you a story. When I was in Koilo in Melbourne, I was in Koilo in Melbourne for 2 years. My wife and I are both not from Australia, but I had been in Australia as a bocher, and I decided then that I'm going to come back for Koilo. And Baruch Hashem, my wife agreed, and we went. So during those 2 years, I at one point I discovered on my porch there was a nest, a bird's nest. A pigeon was building a nest, and it would scare me every time I went out the door. I forgot that it was there, and it would get scared, and I would get scared, and we would scare each other, and it was nice. Um, I it occurred to me that there's something about the mitzvah of Shiluach Hakan, take the eggs, sending away the bird, and it kind of was on the back of my mind. I mean, I don't want the eggs, and I thought that ended the whole discussion. But then I mentioned in passing to some of the people in the kollel, some of my chaverim over there, that I have this nest on my porch, and they suddenly started bidding for the nest for the. They started offering me money to do the mitzvah of Shiluach Hakan. And I was unfamiliar with this, and I said, "Whoa, now I need to do some research and find out what this is about." And so I started looking into it. I spoke to the rabbi over there, the Shoel Meshiv in the kollel, and he showed me some sources. And it turns out the answer to my first question was the mitzvah of Shiluach Hakan, according to one of the sources that he showed me, is not optional. It's like the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda, returning a lost article. You're not obligated to go and find lost articles in order to fulfill the mitzvah. But if you come across a lost object, you're not allowed to walk by. You have a chiyuv to pick it up and find out who it belongs to. Not just that if you want it, then you have to first find out who it belongs to in order to return it. No, you have a mitzvah to pick it up and go return it to the owner. So according to the Aruch HaShulchan, I think it was, I had an obligation to do the mitzvah of Shiluach Hakan. It bothered me a little bit. I was not really interested in getting involved. It also says there that you make a bracha, Asher Kedeshanu b'mitzvayso v'tzivonu al Shiluach Hakan. Aruch HaShulchan also writes that just clapping your hands or making a noise to scare the bird away is not enough. You have to actually take the bird with your hands and send it off. Otherwise, it's not shiluach. Anyway, all these things made me less and less interested in getting involved. But somebody told me that one of the Jungalite in the community he knows somebody who is an expert in the halachas of Shiluach Hakan. I said, wow, I didn't realize such a thing exists. Somebody who specializes in Shiluach Hakan. Why would anybody do that? I said, it's definitely not a Lubavitcher rabbi. No Chabad rabbi specializing in Shiluach Hakan. But I went to this young man and I said to him, I heard that you know somebody who's an expert in Shiluach Hakan. And he said, yeah. I said, can you point me to him? He said, yeah. I said, he's available to talk to me? Yeah. Can you give me his number? 646-899-599. He gave me the number. I said, oh, you have him on speed dial. How do you... Anyway, it was his father. A Lubavitcher rabbi in London, Rabbi Safran, all of Shalom. I forgot his first name.
Mordechai.
Mordechai Safran, correct.
Mm-hmm.
He's a mumcha in Shiluch HaKam. So I called him up and I was going to ask him, what do I have to do now? And I would follow his instructions. Turns out I ended up being on the phone for close to an hour. And he was telling, I was asking a lot of questions and he was giving me a lot of information. And it turned out to be such a moving conversation. I hung up the phone. My head was spinning with all the new things I'd learned. I must have said, wow, like 10 times during that, 45-minute conversation or an hour, whatever it was. So I called him up. Here's how I went. He says, a pigeon nest. They make very sloppy nests. I said, yeah, that's true. Very sloppy. Totally unimpressive. They kept falling apart and they, just very sloppy. He says, well, will you mafkir it? Did you disown it? I said, no. Why would I do that? He said, oh, well, if you weren't mafkir it, then you can't do the mitzvah of Shiluch HaKam. I said, oh, what's that about? He says, well, the pasuk says, "Ki yekare kan sipor lefonecha." If you happen upon a nest, if you chance upon a nest, and if the nest is on your property, then al pi halacha, that's not called happening upon a nest. So that's not the mitzvah of Shiluch HaKam. Unless you are mafkir it first, then you can do the mitzvah. If you're mafkir it before the first time the bird leaves the egg, which you'll never know anyway. There's no way of knowing when was the first time the bird left the egg, and therefore, if it's on your porch, you really just can't. Once the eggs are hatched, you can't really do it. You can't really do the mitzvah of Shiluch HaKam anymore. I said, "Wow, that's interesting." I know the pasuk. I never realized that that there's so many halachas in this pasuk. He then said, and if you wouldn't have called me, you would have done the mitzvah by yourself, and you wouldn't have been yotze anyway, because with pigeons, it's the father bird who sits on the eggs during the day. The mother's only there at night. And you would have done it during the day. You would have sent off the father bird, and it wouldn't have been anything. It would have been meaningless. Wow, that's interesting. I said, at this point, the birds are already hatched. They're already a little chicks, little birdies. What does it mean to take little birds? I mean, eggs I could kind of understand. He said, yeah, I once had an egg. He named the bird. I forgot which bird it was. On my Kyra. The egg is green. I said, really? What'd you do with the egg afterwards? He says, what do you mean? I ate it. Wow. So he says, well, yeah, you can take the birds. I mean, that's part of the mitzvah. The pasuk says, "Efroichim oy beitzim," either the little birds or the eggs. You can do either one. But I don't know if you have a family, you have children. I know you're busy. You have to feed them 5 times a day. You got to give them. I mean, you got to take care of them. I said, Baruch Hashem, I don't have to do this right now. I'm not interested. I said to him, when I heard that there's a person who is a specialist in Shiluch HaKam, I said right away, he's not a Lubavitch, he's not a Chabad rabbi. No Chabad rabbi is going to specialize in Shiluch HaKam. How did you get involved in this? What is this? What brought you to Shiluch HaKam? He says, I'll tell you. Good question. He says, we had a big wedding here, several years ago in London, and a lot of out-of-town guests. And one of the speakers at the wedding was a Rav, a rabbi from visiting from Eretz Yisrael. And he spoke about the Merkaz Shiluch HaKam that he runs in Eretz Yisrael. the Shiluach HaKhan Center, the Shiluach HaKhan Institute. And it started. What they do is they locate nests, and then they bring childless couples to come and do the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKhan, and it's a tremendous schooler for children. And he says the success rate has been unbelievable. So Rabbi Safran said, I thought to myself, that's incredible. We have like 6 or 7 couples right here in London who have been married for a while and have no children. I'm starting a Shiluach HaKhan center right here in London. So he started looking into it, and that's what he did. And if I remember correctly, he said within 2 years, 6 out of 7 couples had children. Unbelievable. I said, wow, that's incredible. He says, yes, it's it is. I said, by the way, the Aruch HaShulchan says we make a bracha. We make a bracha. How do we do the mitzvah of the poil? He says you have to hold it with your hands and send it off. He says, yes, there is a bracha. But the practice is you can clap your hands and you don't have to actually hold it and send it off. That's not the practice. But we don't make a bracha. In fact, we don't make a bracha because if the bird flies away and goes to the nearest telephone wire and then comes right back, that's not called Shiluach HaKhan. If the bird doesn't go away for any period of time, then it's not Shiluach. And then you made a bracha levatola. You have to be going, no. So that's why in concern for a bracha levatola, we don't make a bracha. Anyway, he says, Shiluach HaKhan is a wonderful, wonderful mitzvah. I said, really? What's wonderful about it? I don't really want to. I mean, the story is the Shiluach HaKhan Center with the school for children. That's tremendous, but I don't really see what's wonderful about it. He says, "What's wonderful about it? Do you know what the Zohar says about the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKhan?" I said, no, as it happens, I don't know what the Zohar says about the Shiluach HaKhan. He says, the Zohar says that when, sorry? I thought somebody said something. The Zohar says that when the mother bird returns to the nest and finds that her eggs are gone, she cries out to the Eibishter. It's not fair. And the angel of the birds, the Sar HaOifus, not to be confused with the Sar HaOifim. That's Paro's baker. The angel of the birds comes to the Eibishter and he files a formal complaint. He says, why should a bird be separated from her offspring? And when that happens, Hashem turns to his Hamalya Shalmaila, the whole heavenly assembly, and he says, you hear what the Sarah Oifis is saying? He's saying that it's not fair. Why should a bird be separated from her offspring? And then the Eibishter says, and I've been separated from my children for 2,000 years, and I don't hear anybody making a fuss. And when that happens, the Zohar says, the gates of Rachamim are thrown open, and brachas pour forth, and the Geula is niskarev. The Geula is brought closer. Interesting that at the end of this Zohar, the Zohar adds a one line that says, like a postscript almost, and the cry of the bird, of the demand of the Sar HaOifus is greatest on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Interesting little tidbit at the end. The cry of the Sar HaOifus is greatest on Shabbos and Yom Tov. So anyway, I thanked Rabbi Safran for the conversation, and I ran to the kollel to go and tell the other Jungelite about what I had learned. Wow. And we spoke about it, and it was interesting, and everybody's asking questions, and a very lively discussion, and everybody was saying, wow. And then at the end, one of my chaverim over there said, there's no question that this whole Maisa with the Sarah Oifus comes to the Eibishter, and why should a mother bird be separated from her offspring? And then the gates of Rachamim are thrown open, and Brach is poured for, and the Geula is brought closer, because the Eibishter's Rachamim is aroused. There's no doubt that the same thing happens when a parent has to send away a child for chinuch to yeshiva or to school, and it never gets easier. A mother cries out, why does it have to be this way? Why do I have to send my children away? And I remember when I was growing up, my mother sent away many kids, and every time, I remember as a child watching my older siblings be sent away, and she would stand on the sidewalk and watch till the car disappeared over the horizon, and then with a deep sigh, she would come back inside the house and get back to, life. And it never got easier. And there's no doubt, he says, that when this happens and the mothers cry out to the Eibishter, why do I have to send my children away? There's no question the Sharei Rachamim are thrown open and the Geula is Niskaret. It brings Mashiach closer. And by the way, when do mothers and fathers cry out most about their children who are away? Shabbos and Yom Tov. So who knew this whole arrangement of sending children away for chinuch was a tool the Eibishter put in place so we could bring the Geula?
Is there any discussion about understanding why the Zohar mentions Shabbos and Yom Tov in connection with the mitzvah that probably you couldn't do on Shabbos and Yom Tov?
I don't know. At the time, I tried to look into it a little bit. I with that very question. Well, not necessarily that the prat about you can't do mitzvah on Shabbos and Yom Tov, but I looked for what is the meaning of that? Why it's what's the connection with Shabbos and Yom Tov, and why it's mentioned separately. I didn't search long enough to find an answer, which is a long-winded way of saying I didn't find an answer.
It's amazing.
But yeah.
I said wow so many times. True story. So the minhag is that after the minute. So I apologize. Is there more? We'd love more.
This segment is over.
Okay.
You can do another segment.
What's the next segment?
Huh? The next segment is my graduation speech that I just gave. Oh, where'd you go? You want to hear the speech? So this vert about the bird and sending kids away, I mean, first of all, I send my own children away, but when I wasn't sending my children away, I was witnessing. I worked in yeshiva for all these years, and I see children being sent away. And for the kids, and particularly for the parents, it's very, very difficult. One of the most difficult things, I think, aside from just being separated from your children, the notion of sending somebody away to be under the care of someone else is a terrifying thing. You know, why is it that a call from your child's principal is like a call from the IRS? What is that how it's supposed to be? Your heart's supposed to skip a beat when you get a call from your child's principal? He's a partner. She's your partner in your kid's chinuch. Why is it so terrifying? It shouldn't be terrifying. But it is, and it'll probably remain that way, because when you speak to somebody on the phone, a stranger, basically, about your child, you have to wonder, do they know how perfect my child is? Or have they overlooked that part? Do they only see the complaints? Do they only see the chesronos? I know how perfect my kid is. He's amazing. She's wonderful. Do they see that part? Or is this conversation just a superficial critique of this behavior or that behavior without ever considering that we're talking about a gem? And it's so disconcerting and distressing in a conversation not to know that the people who are looking after your child, who your child is answerable to, who are making decisions that will affect his or her life, if you're not sure that they see that, it's very, very distressing. So the phone call comes in and it's like, oh no, I know my kid doesn't act perfectly all the time, and I can deal with that. And I've been dealing with it, and I know better than the principal about my kid's shtick. But I don't want to talk to them about it if they don't recognize that my kid is perfect. And I like using the word perfect because they say nobody's perfect, right? Nobody's perfect. I remember when I was in prison. I was in prison. When I went, did 7 years as a chaplain in Pennsylvania, and I was standing on the door, as it's called. You don't go into the cells; you stand by the door and talk through the crack in the place was. And I was talking to one of the people on the Jewish list. There was about 60 inmates on the Jewish list in that prison. I was talking to a person on death row. And it's hard. It's kind of any case, I'm standing on the door and talking to him. And it's on one of the higher tiers. It's a big room. And then around the edge of the room, there's like a deck, a porch, a balcony, 3 or 4 balconies up. On each level has all the rooms around. And I was standing on one of these balconies, and the balcony is pretty narrow. So when I'm standing on the door, I'm not tiny, and so for somebody to walk by, it's a bit tight, and especially when you have 2 guards that are escorting an inmate who is cuffed and shackled. They have to. I mean, for 3 people to fit by, it takes a little bit of geometry. So I'm standing by the door, and this inmate is escorted behind me over to his cell. And as he passes by, he growls something unflattering about the rabbi or Jewish, whatever. Not a happy guy. And I decided in my head that as soon as I finish talking to the guy I'm talking to, I'm going to go down to this man's cell and see if I can, get a smile out of him and make his day. So I went over there, and I showed my face in the window. He sees me and he says, "I ain't no Jew." So I said, I know, it's okay. Nobody's perfect. so he didn't really he didn't know what to say. He didn't. Anyway, he didn't smile. It just confused him, and he didn't really know how to respond. And I just said, "Look, I'm just passing by to see if you need anything. Make sure you're okay." And anyway, he made it very clear that he didn't want me to come back, and I didn't. But is nobody perfect? Is it true nobody can be perfect? I've met some people, and some of them in prison, who were as close to perfect as a human being should want to be. When they say nobody's perfect, I'm thinking of my students in high school. When they say nobody's perfect, I think what they mean is nobody's an angel. Oh, okay. That's as it should be. Nobody's an angel. An angel can never do the wrong thing. An angel's never confused about what's the right thing to do. A porcelain doll that has a flaw is not perfect. But we're not porcelain dolls. We're not meant to be porcelain dolls. A robot that makes a mistake, something's wrong. Gets confused, something's wrong. That's not a healthy robot. Something's wrong. It's broken. But a person who makes a mistake, if you say no human being is perfect, you're making it very clear that you're talking about human beings. So what do you mean? No human being doesn't have a flaw? It's like saying I mean, no water isn't wet. I'm like, what? A human being has flaws, but that's the definition of a human being. Every human being has flaws. It doesn't mean you can't be perfect. What happens if a human being makes a mistake and blames everybody for it and becomes depressed and broken about it and goes out and lashes out at everybody in shul because of their mistake and refuses to apologize and make it right? Okay, so such a person is a wreck. And this person needs help. But how about a person who makes a mistake and immediately takes responsibility and goes to the people who were affected by his mistake and apologizes and learns from his mistake and grows from it and comes away stronger and happier? That's not perfect because he made a mistake. He's supposed to make mistakes. That's the human condition. So I met people in prison who have lives that my hair stands on end just thinking about their lives before prison and certainly in prison. And they remain, or they become, depending on the situation, respectful and happy and kind and introspective and responsible, and they don't blame anybody for their problems, and they want to learn and grow, and it is spectacular. Students in high school, all kinds of problems, but a person who is not willing to crumble, is not willing to blame other people and get angry at life, and they're so perfect. So perfect. Okay, so if there's one area where they struggle to take responsibility, okay, so then maybe most people are not perfect because we're not perfect. But nobody's perfect. I know some people who are very, very close to perfect. Kids who have graduated, who are still here in this very high school, who struggle with serious life challenges, all different kinds. And they, at such a young age, are such mention, and they're so responsible and so they could be excused for becoming totally self-absorbed and full of self-pity, and they don't. They're respectful and they're kind and they're, and they do struggle, and they open up about it, and they look for help, and they they regret when they've been disrespectful or make a mistake. They're so perfect. It makes you cry to watch how they handle their challenges with such grace. It's so humbling. Are they not perfect? I think they're perfect. A human being can be perfect, and a lot of our children are perfect. And if your kid's teacher doesn't recognize it, they went to one in-service too few. L'chaim.
Mike? Oh, thank you, Chaim. So a few things. First of all, now we're going to turn off the recording, and those that have questions will ask their questions. And please, everybody, feel comfortable to do so, because there is no, because there will be no record of it. So ask away. Just give me a second to shut off the recording.